So, after a lot, and I mean a lot of hype and marketing the last few weeks on social media, the first episode of Picard Season 3 is here, The Next Generations it's titled, which could be apt, we don't know. And I know a lot of fans have been really looking forward to this, and have got high expectations with the original cast coming back. And some, like myself, are safe to say a little bit more cautious and wary after what they've done with the first two seasons. So I'll get to the review in a bit. But if you haven't seen the episode, here are some thoughts that are going to be spoiler free, and I've also got some other thoughts at the end of the video if you want to stick about for that. Oh, and Admiral, this is the Geek in Review, and by the way, like and subscribe. I'm happy to say that this was a really good episode of not only Star Trek, but of Star Trek Picard. Everything worked better and looked better than in the last two seasons, and the score is just one of the absolute highlights. I mean, it's amazing. A lot of beautiful ship stuff as well. A lot of feel and nods to the original 1 to 6 movies. In fact, if I'm being honest, it's way more than you'd expect. There's a ton of choices that they've made with the style and the framing of shots that call back to those movies. Even the fonts in the intro to this episode, heavily you feel that of the original movies in there, but obviously I'm going to get to that in a second. A couple of big noticeable differences here is, one is the pace. It's just such a well-paced episode. They fit everything in. And the second is, there's no long speeches and there's no mention of trauma, really a little bit, but not too much. Again, I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, it seems that they've learned their lesson after all those long-winded speeches in Season 2 that no one really liked. There's not one in this episode at all. The dialogue does flow a lot better as well. There's a great scene with Riker and Picard when they first meet up, and it just feels so real, and you know that these guys have known each other for absolutely years, and it just works. I'm not saying that everything about the episode does work. I do have a few gripes, but I can't really go into that without going into spoilers. Now, yeah, we're not going to get all the TNG crew in the first episode. We do get some backstory about what some of them have been up to, and a lot of questions surrounding one character's actions and choices since the last time we've seen them on screen in Nemesis. But if you haven't seen the episode, I have done a Picard Season 3 theory video, so maybe check that out first. And if you have seen the episode, let's get to it. Straight away with the fonts, it just brings you into a sort of more classic Star Trek, or they're letting you know what the feel of this show is going to be, because it is all over it, let's say. Cutting back to pace for a second, this is a very slow paced opening. Bits of it feel at the start of Alien when they're waking up in the ship. We see that someone has been listening to Picard's old logs, one of the ones from Best of Both Worlds. And there's going to be a few callbacks to Best of Both Worlds in here, which I've got some questions about. I'm going to have to look into that, but I'll get to that in a second. So it turns out that we're on board Crusher's ship, the Elos, and she appears to be on the run. And everything about this opening, I know I said I wasn't a particularly huge fan of the pace of this section of the episode, but it looks cinematic straight away and it grabs you. It feels very like the first few minutes of First Contact when Picard's having that Borg flashback. Ship's in trouble, whoever it is that's after them has found them. We see the ship get boarded, and you know if you watch my videos, I love a good ship invasion. And Crusher is doing exactly what she should have done in First Contact, which is kick ass. And yeah, she doesn't get a lot of lines in the first episode, but Gates McFadden here, it really does shine. But anyway, it's not just Beverly on the ship, there's a mysterious voice that we don't hear who appears to be sort of locked in the cupboard. And more bad guys on the way after she defeats the ones that are on the ship. So she sends an SOS for Jean-Luc Picard, and that's where the story's kicking off. It's kicking off with Picard as the Enterprise D, well, at least the picture of it. So he's back at Chateau Picard with Laris, and they're talking about the relationship and feelings that he has with the ships that he's commanded. He says that the Enterprise D wasn't his first love, but it was his favourite ship. And he mentions that he wants to give the painting away to Geordi because Geordi's now running the Starfleet Museum. So yeah, a lot of people suspected that from the trailers. I was a little shocked about what Geordi was doing. I thought he might be doing something to do with engineering and ship design. And we find out as well, the reason Picard wants to give it away is that he's leaving Earth to sort of start a new life, or maybe start the last chapter, because he's now fully retired from Starfleet, although he's still get referred to as Admiral Picard. And straight away, the dialogue between Laris and Picard here does feel a lot more natural than it ever has done in the first 2 seasons. They talk about what they're going to be doing with their new life, how Picard maybe makes a joke about writing his book. And they talk about legacy and what Picard's legacy is going to be. And Laris says something like, a man looks to his past to define himself. But Picard says that he's not a man that needs a legacy. So yeah, going back to generations, he's facing the fact that he knows he's the last of the Picards. But, I mean, come on, how is this not setting up that this mysterious voice, that this mysterious guy is his son? Of course it's his son. Anyway, he gets the mysterious signal, which arrives to his mysterious old comm badge, which is maybe too much of a nod to TNG and a little bit heavy with the uniform and the box and stuff. But the music here, again, absolutely great, added to the scene. It adds to every scene in this episode, honestly, it's so good. So the mystery comm badge has a mystery message with a code that has to be unlocked. But anyway, Picard manages to crack the code and gets the message from Beverly. She mentions the word Helbert. So that's the first mystery set up, in that she doesn't want any Starfleet involvement when Picard comes to help her and not to trust anyone. So I wonder what's going on or what's happened that she's not trusting Starfleet. I've got a theory on that, but I'll get to that at the end of the video. And then there's a scene with Picard and Laris where they're sort of talking about his history with Beverly. So yeah, I did think here that Laris maybe should have had a little bit more knowledge about Beverly. Laris does mention that Picard and Beverly did try and make it as a couple, or as she puts it, tried to be lovers, which... yeah, that was a little cringe, let's be honest. But, I mean, come on, mentioning that, how are they not setting up Picard's son? And Picard fills in some blanks here of what some of the TNG crew have been up to, and well, basically none of them have heard from Beverly in 20 years. She's just cut them off. Which, yeah, what happened there? Because that'd be obviously around the time of Nemesis. So, with the adventure underway and a few mysteries in place, there's a lot to take in here in the opening scenes of this episode and what this could mean for how will all these guys, and by that I mean the original TNG crew, get on once they get back together. So Picard goes to meet Riker, and the introduction here, or at least the audience introduction to Riker and Picard in the bar, is one of my favourite scenes of the episode. And I think there's quite a lot of deep nods to Star Trek as a franchise here, because at the bar, Riker sees that they're selling sort of, the little novelty ship model things, kind of like Eagle Moss, but not really. And the barmaid makes a comment that no one wants to buy the Enterprise D. And there's another nod later on, which I think is about the actors in Star Trek that I'm going to get to. But yeah, some good fan service, especially if you're one of the ship-loving crowd like myself. When these two guys meet back up, this is, again, where it really works for me in this episode. It's so simple. You can tell that the dynamic between them has changed. They're now more friendly. It's nowhere near as formal. It just feels like two guys meeting up after they've not seen each other in a while. And I'm sure after the pandemic, when you hadn't seen someone for a while, that's kind of what it must have felt like for you. But yeah, they're dealing with the fact as well that they're not the men that they used to be in the Next Generation era as well. They're fully aware of where they are in their life and their careers and their families, and also how they're seen. There's a few lines about public image, but they're more equals now, and you can still get a sense of the history between these two guys. But yeah, the whole thing about legends whose best days are behind them and sort of having to rely on their past. When you think about it, comparing that to, say, an actor who was on a popular TV show and is always known for that one character, and by that I mean they're sort of beholden to it whether they like it or not. Is that talking about Star Trek actors? I kind of think that it is, and if it is, that's showing how strong the writing can be on this. But yeah, we also get another bit of a revelation that Riker's marriage to Troy is on the rocks, and the way that he told him, yeah, again, it worked, it felt real, it flowed really well. He doesn't elaborate on anything else, so maybe Riker isn't adjusting to this sort of new stage of his life as well as Picard did. This meet up, we finally get one mystery solved with a Helbert word that Beverly mentioned in their message. It turns out it was a computer virus that was on board the Enterprise D during Best of Both Worlds, so that's why Picard doesn't know about it. It's something that the Borg done when he was a Borg. Now, this is the first red alert for me in terms of writing for this episode, because one, I can't remember if that happened in Best of Both Worlds. I don't think it was mentioned, And two, even if Picard wasn't there and he was a Borg, he would have known about the virus because the Borg done it and they're a collective consciousness. There's a few other red flags that pop up later on in the episode, but this was my first. If you get a chance to watch Best of Both Worlds before I do again, is this mentioned at all? Let me know in the comments below. Catch up with Rafi on Metalis Prime. Second red flag in 2 minutes, guys, that's all I'm going to say. But seriously, Terry, what were you thinking of? You were doing so well. But all I'll say is the planet looks good. Not great, not bad. Very Star Warsy, very Blade Runner feel to the bit which is in the bar. And, you know, again, if you've watched my previous videos, I'm not a fan of Rafi. And if you've not watched any of my previous videos, why are you here? Come back, like and subscribe. And yeah, we get a huge dump here on what Rafi has been up to, or at least what's happened to her since the Season 2 finale of Picard. So, her and Seven are over, she's fallen off the wagon, and she's fell out of Starfleet as well, it seems. So much so that she's willing to sell secrets. She mentions a few secrets as well, including some off-site Daystrom experiments and a quantum tunnel tech that could be used as a weapon. Because the Orion that she's talking to basically tells her to forget that she mentioned it. And I couldn't really decide what was going on with her here. Was this all fake? Was this all real? For about 30 seconds, it was maybe the best Rafi had ever done. And that's not saying much because I didn't hate her here, and usually I do. Yeah, this scene isn't so much about filling in the blanks about what Rafi's been up to, but setting up the MacGuffin of the Red Lady. Now, initially I thought the Red Lady was going to be a nod back to Minuet from that classic Riker episode. It's actually something else. And we find out pretty much straight away after this scene that Rafi's undercover. So, they make her far less interesting straight away. She's just the way that she was. And that was, you know, a good, minute to 3 minutes there that I did really like her. But there is still something wrong with her if you notice that her hand is shaking. While I think it would have been a bit more interesting if they had made it that she'd sort of fallen down so hard she was willing to sell out Starfleet and the Federation, I understand from a writing perspective why they didn't do that. This is the last season after all, you can't really go too far off. With someone who, let's be honest, isn't a main character, we're here to see the next generation crew. So she's basically on a mission using the last arena to find out what's happened to this quantum tunnel and weapon. And she's talking to her mysterious Starfleet security handler, and she's trying to find out what's going on with these stolen weapons, where are they, and let's be honest, let's just cut straight to it. This is definitely Worf that she's speaking to here. The whole conversation is a bit heavy-handed in the way that it's written. The whole "you are a warrior" line, and then literally the next text that pops up on screen is a line that Worf says from the trailer that came out a few weeks ago. And yet, again, I'm just disappointed that they haven't taken the opportunity to make Rafi more interesting here. She does work out the mystery, though, of who the Red Lady is, and it turns out it's a statue of Captain Rachel Garrett, the captain of the Enterprise C, so another Easter egg and another mystery that has been very quickly revealed. So, she knows where the statue is, she knows where the target is, and Rafi decides to go to Rigel to warn them. Just as Starfleet headquarters on the planet is destroyed using the stolen quantum tunnel and weapon, and it looks great, very cinematic. I've got a few questions about how the weapon works. Where is it being fired from? Because it looks as if it's some sort of portal weapon. Because in this scene it looks as if they've opened a portal below the building and then they've opened the other side of it above the building. So essentially they're dumping the collapsing building on itself. Yeah, we get a ton of ship porn when it cuts back to Riker and Picard. So his plan is to go in pretending they're part of an inspection for the USS Titan, which is mentioned in the trailers. So I think my theory might be right that they're going to steal the Titan at some point. But all of this looks great, and again it feels like the sort of 1 to 6 Star Trek movie vibes. Especially all the close-up ship stuff and flying over. It feels like, you know, when Kirk was going back to the Enterprise in the motion picture and the Rafi, and we all love those scenes. And the bit when the Titan is revealed, it reminds me a little bit of when you first see the Excelsior in the search for Spock. But I mean, come on, they're definitely going to nick the ship. And I do have a huge problem with what this scene sets up, but I'm going to explain that at the end of the video. So, Picard and Riker are on board to take a Starfleet ship somewhere that it shouldn't be, and it might be a little bit easier with Commander Annika Hansen on board the Titan. So yeah, she's not going by 7 of 9 anymore, she's going by her birth name, and it's not by choice. The captain of the Titan, Liam Shaw, is making her do it. So I'm getting, even before we meet the guy, a bit of a Jellicoe vibe. Because Annika isn't happy about it. But yeah, the whole scene in the corridor during the inspection is exactly like Kirk and the Rafi can, and we get some pretty cool looking alien crew members as well. And mixing this style of the original movies and references with the sort of TNG vibe really works. I mean, it feels like retro Star Trek, but it also feels like the future vibe as well. Oh, and also once they get to the bridge, we meet LaForge's daughter. Again, I'm not sure how I feel about her or having everything connected in this way. It makes the universe seem a little bit small. But let's see what they're going to do with her. So what about the captain of the Titan then? Liam Shaw. Bit of a weird intro. If you've ever watched the TV show Hannibal, it reminded me of that. And he does seem to be a bit of a dick, let's be honest. He's not actually happy that these two legends are on board the ship. But it's refreshing to see the way that he talks to them, how he's sort of like fully aware of who they are and what they've done. He just might not necessarily like them. In Star Trek 2 often, you know, when Sisko got introduced to Picard in Emissary, that was a very hostile vibe. But Picard and Riker are just sort of sitting there smiling politely because they need this guy's ship at the end of the day. And to be honest, he's not buying what they're selling. He really puts them in their place and outright tells them, hey, I'm not going to do what you want to do, so deal with it. And he does seem to have an issue with ex-Borg as well. And this whole scene with the four of them, because Seven's there as well, really, again, flows better than anything that we've seen in Picard when it comes to dealing with Starfleet, especially in Season 1. We get a kind of Voyager callback as well when Seven summons them, and man, did that scene look exactly like she was just standing in astrometrics. And she's pretty much aware that Riker and Picard are up to no good, so Picard fills her in on what's going on with Beverly. And the next scene, this is a Seven scene. This is one that she should have had in the first season, definitely. And maybe the best that she's been in Picard, when she talks about struggling with her life, getting back to the Alpha Quadrant and her identity. She joined Starfleet because it's what she thought was the right thing to do, but it turns out it might not be the right thing for her. And I really hope that they build on this, because they've really underused or misused the character of Seven and Picard, and this could really, for me at least, set her back on track. So of course, she takes the Titan to the writing system exactly where they need to be to go and find Beverly. And is Captain Shaw ever on the bridge? Because he wasn't there when they got on board the ship, and he's not here now. And yeah, again, a nod to the captain of the Excelsior in the search for Spock when he's in bed and the sort of alarms start going off. But one thing that I don't like about this storyline is Riker and Picard sneaking about and lying. I know that I've said you can feel the growth in the characters, but they never exhibited any of these traits in the Next Generation. But for me, it doesn't fit firmly in with what these characters should be or how they should represent themselves. I've actually got a video planned where I'm going to break down an episode of Star Trek that pretty much defines every character of the Next Generation, so keep your eyes out for that. But anyway, back to the episode. So they work out that there's only 2 people on board Beverly's ship, and this is another scene that I didn't like once they get on board, the whole TNG CSI thing when they're in the corridors investigating what's happened. It felt like a lot of unnecessary dialogue and it was a little bit too long, but they get to the bridge and they get jumped by who it turns out to be the other guy on the ship, who's Beverly's son, and he outright confirms it. So does that mean he's Picard's son? I think so from the look on Picard's face. But this sort of, again, is going back to the original Star Trek films, particularly The Search for Spock and The Wrath of Khan, because that means that this guy's David, Picard's Kirk, and Beverly's Carol Marcus, essentially, doesn't it? But anyway, yeah, bomb dropped about Beverly's son, and I did explain how I thought that this guy could be Beverly and Picard's son in my theory video as well. Basically, I think what happened is the year that she was off the Enterprise in Season 2 of Next Generation, that's when she was pregnant, and then when she came back, she just left the child on Earth. Although, now after watching this episode, I think that maybe this has got something to do with Starfleet, because why doesn't she want Starfleet involved or showing up? And she's been hiding this guy to protect him, so what is she protecting him from? But before we can find out too much, the villains come out of the nebula, because of course they do, and then it cuts to some great looking credits with the First Contact theme. Now, as I said, I really like this episode. It seems to live up to the hype, but it is only the first episode, so I am cautiously optimistic. There are some things that I really liked, some things that I also didn't like. I'm going to do more videos on this episode and break it down, but this is just my first review after watching the first episode, well, once. But have you seen the episode? Let me know what you think in the comments below. What were you happy with? What were you not happy with? What do you think's going to happen next? And did it live up to the hype? If you don't want to leave a comment, as I say, you can follow me on Twitter at The Geeks Reviews. If you've made it this far, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It's only a quick click, but it means the world to me. And as always, I'm Al. Thanks for watching.